Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. So this is not the Retroid Pocket 2 video I thought that I was going to make. I thought I was going to revel at the design of the system, talk about how it's both my go-to portable device and how it's replaced my Raspberry Pi at home. But this is not that review. It was nearly impossible to use the Retroid Pocket 2 without longing for one of my other retro handheld devices. We're going to take an in-depth look at the Retroid Pocket 2, and I'm also going to show you the Anbernic RG351M and Pocket Go S30, and tell you why these are much better devices if you're in the market for retro handhelds. I'll also take you through everything I tried to do to make the Retroid Pocket 2 the device I so badly wanted it to be. So let's dive right in. Starting with the device itself, I really like the look of it. The Super Famicom version of this device with the colored buttons was the one thing that really got me excited about this device, and it definitely delivered on that. I'm not going to be pro gaming or anything on this thing, it's really just for retro games, so as far as button feel goes, it's really not something that makes or breaks a device for me, as long as you can feel that you're pressing down on these buttons. So let's take a listen, and yeah, they press. I definitely like the stacked trigger buttons on the back, and first impressions of that slider analog stick that is notoriously hated really is not the worst thing in the world. Software-wise, this device has dual boot functionality. It has Android 6.0 with some pre-installed emulators, and their own Retroid OS, which is just a game launcher. I like the idea of the Retroid OS since it aims to deliver an emulation station type launcher for your games like other retro handhelds have, but it's pretty poorly executed. The UI is just clunky, and while there are some settings you can change, some emulators don't have any customizations at all, and none from what I've seen let you remap your controller. It's always a nice surprise when these emulators have an SD card that comes preloaded with some games, but they are strangely added to the file system, so you can't just use the same game files on the Android side of the device. And adding games to the Retroid OS is a pain, period. The process is just archaic. You need to put all of your games in a specific download folder. To add them to the system after they're on your SD card, you need to go into Settings, Game Settings, External Game Management, and then select each game and map it to an emulator, and then you can go back to the main screen and launch it. It's incredibly frustrating when you want to add a bunch of games. The store within Retroid OS obviously has its setbacks, like the legality, but even if that's something that doesn't bother you, it's still not even worth using. Navigating the store is a nightmare, and searching for games is impossible because you can't add a space between your keywords. Once you are able to search for a game with a single word and no spaces, its game selection is subpar and the quality of the ROMs are also pretty hit or miss. Switching over to Android is pretty simple though, just hold the home button from the main screen and select Switch System from the settings. When it asks if you want to reboot to open source Android, hit yes. Alright, so maybe Retroid OS gets a pass. I mean, hey, they made a whole dual boot system on this thing, and that alone is impressive. Let's move on to the Android side, which I thought was certainly going to change my mind about the Retroid Pocket. How could you dislike a device that has the Google Play Store plus any sketchy APK file you could dream of installing? Me. I could. This device still didn't cut it for me. Given that Android is a touchscreen operating system, without the touchscreen hardware on this device, it makes navigating through the system to get things set up insanely cumbersome. It has a mouse mode that you can activate, but it's still pretty hard to use. When you switch over to the Android side for the first time, it comes with some pre-installed emulators and a confusing number of RetroArch apps. You can just stick with the stock launcher and open the apps for each emulator, and there is a TV launcher app that gives you a little bit more of a controller-friendly UI, but I really wanted something similar to Emulation Station like the other handheld devices have. For this, there are a bunch of options, but the one that I found that was best is called Reset Collection. It's $4.99 from the Google Play Store, and they even have a Discord server to get support and provide feedback. I also used an Android app to auto-start Reset Collection when my device boots up because I wanted to be able to just jump right into the game selection, but I found that I'm just sitting there waiting for the app to launch because the Android OS is pretty slow. Initially for Reset Collection, you have to invest a lot of time up front just waiting around for databases to download before you can get things set up. This initial download took about 45 minutes for me. Adding games through the Reset Collection was the best experience by far. You just have to browse the SD card for a full directory of a specific system and it will add it to the main screen and pull box art from online. Let me also cover upgradability a bit. I know that this device has been improved at least a little bit with the release and support of Android 8 for the Retroid Pocket, but after hours of effort, it just didn't work for me. I have a MacBook, and despite all efforts between macOS and running VMware in parallels to try Windows 10, I could just never get the firmware flashing apps to detect this device. If I ever get this working, I'll definitely make an updated video with some new thoughts, but as of now, I'm stuck at the factory Android 6.0. So let's get to some gameplay. So as a handheld device, it performs fine despite the slowness from Android and the lack of configuration on Retroid OS. But another goal I had with the Retroid Pocket 2 was to use it at home too, kind of like a retro Switch. But even here, it couldn't really succeed. It handles the HDMI strangely with its scaling between games, and there's some really bad input lag when you use it with a Bluetooth controller. And even still with the input lag, even all the buttons on the controller weren't fully recognized, so the home button on the controller wouldn't take me to the main screen of Android. I had to actually go over to the system, press the home button, and then continue navigating with my controller. Other things that drove me crazy about this device were things like the battery meter being so miscalibrated that sometimes the device just randomly powers off even though it seems it's at like 75% or something. And then it gets into this weird cycle where you have to plug it in to turn it back on, and then if you put it to sleep in battery and it's not fully charged, the only way to wake it up is to plug it back in. Another thing is the slot for the micro SD card has this rubber protector on it, and it takes me forever to get that thing open. And then, once you do get that open, the micro SD card doesn't pop out enough that it takes some more time to actually pull the card out of the device. My entire experience with the Retroid Pocket 2 is based on the fact that I had already been using the Anbernic RG351M and the Pocket Go S30 for a few months, so everything I did was overshadowed by the quality those devices bring. The Anbernic RG351M is by far the best feeling device. The L3 and R3 buttons are great for hotkeys, the buttons are clicky, the flexibility in firmware is great, and loading games is insanely easy. The Pocket Go S30 has a unique Super Nintendo controller with a screen in the middle of it look to it that keeps me coming back to use it. The stacked triggers and its minimalism are great, and the Simple 30 firmware from Retro GameCore brings this device over the finish line for me that I can use it as a daily driver. Of course, you lose out on the Google Play Store, but remember, this is a low-powered portable emulator, and I want the best portable emulator experience. So, to sum it up, the Retroid Pocket 2 is a great looking device. It kind of serves as a cool proof of concept that you could have an emulator with Android, but this device just doesn't cut it for me. HDMI was a big selling point for me, but it's pretty low quality when I'm using it on my TV. Bluetooth on retro handhelds is a really great idea, but the controller input is too laggy and the buttons can't be easily remapped. And then Retroid OS is not flexible enough, but yet Android 6 is too slow. I'm also stuck on Android 6 until there's a way to upgrade through a virtual machine or straight on macOS. My personal experience with this device wasn't great, and at $85, I would definitely recommend the Pocket Go S30 for $60 to $80 depending on where you buy it from, or the RG351M for $90 to $100, also depending on where you get it from. The 351M plays all the same systems as the Retroid Pocket 2, and with different firmware options, you can get improved Dreamcast emulation. They're both drag and drop when it comes to loading in games, and the RG351M even has Wi-Fi built in. I can't recommend the Retroid Pocket 2 because simply put, there are better devices out there. And that does it. Thanks for making it to the end. I'll have links in the description of this video for all 3 retro handheld devices. Now that they're readily available and you can get them through Amazon Prime, you don't have to wait 3 to 6 weeks like I did for mine. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and give me a subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.